Hello and welcome to Outdoor Asylum. We're here at the Cache River Studios in the Elite Duck Call Shop. Here with my good buddy Bryan Shanks. And guys, just want to remind you to subscribe to this. Hit that like button. I know you hear that with with every type of podcast or video that you see, but it really does help us out and lets us send you notifications whenever we have another episode coming out. So don't forget to do that. Just remember, every time you hit like or subscribe, a little baby duck hatches up there in Canada. So it is up to you to make sure that happens. So, right. Bryan, tell me what's been going on, man.
Man, busy week. We're in the heat of VBS, Vacation Bible School, in my world. So just been insane with prep and fun stuff. I got to do rec yesterday. That was horrible. We're talking about, our producer Jake, dealing with the stickiness of the season. I was definitely in that yesterday, but it's been good. It's been a good week, man.
Yeah, a little bit stressful, I would imagine, planning all that stuff out. But, I went, I don't know if we talked about in the last podcast, it wasn't just a couple weeks ago that we went on vacation. We went to Disney World for a week, and I think I'm just now starting to get over. I've had a little bit of PTSD. It was great, very thankful that we got to do that. Great to spend some time with the wife and my daughter. But I don't talk about it much, but I have a birth defect. I was born with no patience, and standing in a line for like 40 minutes to get on a ride that lasts about 3. That grinds on me a little bit. Yeah. But I'm starting to get back to normal. The shakes are over. I'm not waking up screaming in the middle of the night. So it's getting better. Well, man, I was sitting out here. We've been, we film all these right here, like I said, in the duck call shop. So I've been out there spending all morning working on deer grunts. Actually, we started making some deer grunts last year. So, and again, check them out, elitecalls.net. If you guys want to look into anything like that or any of our products, please do. But sitting out there working, running the machines, we're working on these deer grunts, and I'm thinking about this podcast. Exactly what are we going to talk about? So sometimes while the machines are running, I would Google a couple things and looking up some stuff, and I found a really cool quote that goes along with what we were talking about here, or what we were thinking about discussing. This is a quote from Fred Bear. Now, Fred Bear being I'm sure the listeners here know who we're talking about. I'm sure you do too. The legendary archer and hunter, Fred Bear. Ted Nugent's got a great song about Fred Bear. I know you being a musician, I know you would know him from that for sure.
I know.
You guys don't know, Bryan is one heck of a musician, great guitar player. So I knew he would know Fred Bear from that, if nothing else. But the quote was here, and I wrote it down to make sure that I get this right. It said, when a hunter is in a tree stand with moral values and with the proper hunting ethics and richer for the experience, that hunter is 20 feet closer to God. Talking about being up off the ground in that tree stand, of course. And, it brings up an interesting topic. I think most of the time, guys in the outdoors, I think that we are, fairly spiritual type guys. We're always out there. I think you're thinking about God a lot of times when you're out in the outdoors, and if nothing else, you're praying that buck or whatever you're hunting is fixing to come out there in front of you. But I hear a lot of guys that talk. They say, I don't really go to church, but I love to go hunting, and I don't go to church. I'd rather just go out in the woods because, I feel closer to God sitting out in that tree stand or that duck blind or whatever they're doing, the boat fishing, than I do when I'm sitting cooped up in that church. So what would be your response to that? If someone was saying that, being someone involved in church, what's your response?
Well, I mean, I've heard that same sentiment from guys before. I love that you're, that you quoted Fred Bear there. That's awesome. He's talking more geographically closer to God, 20 feet up in the air, I think. But no, and even it's a heart thing. I think that it's good to be in scenarios where we feel closer to God. Mm-hmm. I really do. I think that's probably more of a moment of worship for a believer, than anything. When we start talking about feeling closer to God, it's a place where we worship. Worship's more than just a song that we're singing on Sunday morning or a segmented part of our church service. It's a lifestyle. It's It's us acknowledging God and offering our hearts to him. So, you know, I didn't grow up hunting and fishing. So a lot of the stuff I learned, you know, as I, you know, live life with you and with other guys that are hunters and fishers, you know, that's new to me, but I'm the same. I would find myself in places of worship, on hikes, at the beach. You know, we lived, you know, on an island for a couple of years, and just to, you know, see God's creation, see the waves come in and know that he called them to stop right there. You know, he commanded all that to happen. The sun rising and setting over the ocean. Those were things that brought me to this same kind of worship. So there's good there, but there's also bad and ugly. You know, in my scenario, when I would sit at the beach, I would look down the beach at sunset and I would see hundreds of people, you know, that had come out just to watch the sunset and how pretty it was, you know. And I got to thinking about what the Bible says, that broad is the road that leads to destruction, and there are many walking it, and narrow is the gate, and hard is the path that lead to salvation, if you find it. And as I looked at those hundreds of people down the beach, I kept thinking, man, the great majority of them don't believe. They don't worship the way we worship. So what are they doing? They're worshiping creation. And for me, that spawned something in that thought, the same sentiment that you're talking about right here with guys that are close, feel closer to God out in the boat or in the blind or in the stand or in the woods. We got to be careful that we're not worshiping the creation, that we're worshiping the Creator. We got to keep everything where it belongs. You know, God is the one who authored all of this, has authority over all this. So we've got to worship him in his creation. I think it's a great thing. I do. I won't knock a guy that says that for sure. But I think there's some precautions that we need to take. We need to realize first that, you know, that could be the evidence of situational relationship. Okay. And to describe that a little bit deeper, you know, a situational relationship, you're kind of painting two scenarios, a scenario of feeling close to God in the woods and how close do I feel in other situations, church being, you know, part of the topic. That's kind of scary. You know, when you start to think about it, you know, on a deeper level, my position in life, you know, in regards to where I'm at geographically or where I'm at emotionally or whatever it may be, shouldn't have any bearing on my closeness to God. You know, as a matter of fact, the scripture tells us to draw near in times of trouble, to draw near in hardship when things aren't just great. So, you know, we've got to be sure that we're not allowing ourselves to be situationally close to God and realize that he is omnipotent and omniscient. He is always constant, and our relationship with him is the same. So I think there's a precaution there for us.
Yeah, you talk about those, you know, during hard times, bringing you closer to God. You know, it's brought, I think, because people do feel closer to God in the outdoors. It during COVID, you know, we're you know, sitting there now. I feel like I know that COVID's still out there, you know, but I feel like it's just if we're on the tail end of it. To me, I look at it like it's past, you know, and I know it's different for people in different parts of the country. You know, that's a much different picture than it is us here in rural Arkansas. But, you know, when it first hit and it was like, well, we can't go to work, everything's shutting down around us, I saw a lot of people, you know, that the state parks were just booming. You know, everybody was going there. And I don't think it was just to just go have fun. I think it was almost like I think people were turning to God. I think that happened a lot during this last year. You know, with everything that happened, a lot of people starting to examine their relationship with the Lord and starting to turn to God and seeking him for comfort. And I think a lot of that was going to these parks, being in the outdoors. You know, it wasn't, you know, there really wasn't so much maybe the hunting, but just go out and sit by the campfire. Yeah. Let's go be with the family and nature a little bit. That's just where people kind of retreated to, you know. So I think we definitely saw that a lot this last year. Yeah. You know? And I know I've heard, you know, going back to our topic about people, you know, not kind of seeking, I guess, letting nature replace church a little bit, which is what you were talking about there. You get into, I think people are maybe not happy with their church that they're in. Or one of the things I know I battle when I go to church in the morning, I mean, one of the things I have to stop and actually pray about before the service starts, I'm ashamed to say it, but is my mind wandering. You know, I'm sitting there and I know that in this moment I am supposed to be focused on God, focused on worship, focused on learning, about Him, listening to the sermon, and trying to apply it to my life. But at the same time, I have to admit, man, I am so guilty of my mind just going about, it's about work or this or that, or what do I have to do this afternoon? What do I have to do this week? That is really a battle, that mind wanders, and I think sometimes it's a little bit easier to focus when you're relaxed out there in the outdoors. But
man, I agree with that. I do. And just two things on your thoughts, because I've had the same battles, being a preacher and being so connected in inner workings of the church, man, I've had the same battles, mind wandering, not focusing, two things when I think of that particular issue. We're called to self-control, fruits of the Spirit, love, peace, patience, joy, kindness, self-control. We're called to self-control. And we're also called to have self-control over our thoughts. Paul writes in 2 Corinthians 10, he's talking about lofty opinions and outside views trying to attack the mind. But I think the same discipline matters because he says these words were to take every thought captive. Mm-hmm. It means we're supposed to be aware and focused on every thought that comes in our minds, and definitely what comes out of our mouths. Mm-hmm. But in the respect of church, man, if you're not growing, if you're not learning, one of two things, and probably more one of one thing, but the devil is at work trying to keep your mind from focusing on God's word first and foremost. You got to go into it knowing that. And the second part is, man, we've got to remember that self-control, and we're to remember that the thoughts that we're wandering to are not where our minds are supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And we talked about at the beginning here about feeling close to God away from the church, but in reality, we're never closer to God than when we're collectively in His Word. So being together in the church, important. Mm-hmm. Book of Hebrews paints that picture clearly. We're not to forsake the gathering, not to forsake the assembly. Focusing, keeping our thoughts from wandering, having that spiritual discipline of self-control, and then, being close to God here and not just in our feelings. Mm-hmm. Man, I'm going to tell you, feelings are bad in that scenario. And if I relied on feelings for my relationship with my wife, we probably wouldn't have made it this far. Hot sauce is pretty awesome around here. When she does a good job for you, she does a great job at home. But just like any other relationship, ebbs and flows in the feelings department.
Yeah. So
mind your feelings, man. Your feelings are going to fail you a million times. God's word and His position in your life is always going to keep you constant, keep you focused, keep you learning. Mm-hmm. Going to say something controversial. If you're not growing in your church and you're applying yourself to keep your thoughts captive, mm-hmm. you might not be in the right church.
Yeah.
Never to be divisive, never to cause any sort of split. Mm-hmm. But man, you've got to go where you're growing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put that out there, just kind of little, folks get a little leery when you start saying you might need to leave your church. I'm not saying come to mine. I'm saying find a place where you are growing.
Yeah. You're not saying leave and don't come to another church. You're saying find the right, find the church.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. But that wandering thoughts, man, that's definitely the devil at work in your mind, trying to keep you from the growth that God's trying to give you.
We've talked about this before. We need to go through with this. I don't know. Can you explain to me what it is about a campfire? I mean, what is it about a campfire? And you look at the old stories of, I don't know. We tend to not try to put people in some kind of a box or group of a certain individual, but we think about like Native Americans around the campfire. And as hunters and outdoorsmen, man, I love to sit around a campfire and just talk. There's something about that, and I think a lot of it is you're with like-minded people, which is not always a good thing with me. But I think sometimes it'd be great to have some times of worship, especially for men. Where you just get around that campfire and just
What is it about the campfire, man? I mean, it's a manly thing, dude. I mean, fire. Well, look what I made. It's fire. No, it is. It's a really cool time, man. It's kind of, we do a lot of bonfires with youth and stuff. And then I've been, in my time hunting and learning and things like that, I've been in some of those campsite campfires, man. And those are great experiences. They really are. And what better time to worship?
You break the guitar out?
Oh, man, all the time.
Yeah. We're definitely going to have to. We're definitely going to have to do that. But I think, we're kind of taking this from a perspective of, with with nature, don't let it replace church. But I do believe that I think it's a critical part of a Christian's growth, and it maybe if it's not nature, solitude, I think is, that's what I get from it most of the time. And I think solitude is almost a critical component. I mean, I think you need to be with others. I think going to church, I think that's absolutely a must. And I would encourage anybody, if you're not involved in a church, find a church and get more involved with it. Even I know you feel close to God when you're out hunting, but seek that church. I think you get a lot of, learning and worship. I think that's a key element. But I would also say to someone who is very involved in church that doesn't seek that solitude, that hasn't, try getting out in nature a little bit and spending time with God alone in the solitude of that. I feel like that is a critical piece of this puzzle that we're all trying to put together.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Jesus set that example. He was in the wilderness. Scripture indicates 40 days in the wilderness, but he set that example, being alone with God in the garden. He was with men, and he told them, "You stay here. I've got to go be alone with God." I think that's very, very important. It is. It's a very important aspect of it. So there's a give and take on the whole idea of the wilderness and replacing church. I don't think it replaces the congregation and what the church actually is for us, but I think it is essential to be alone with God in whatever that place is that we find ourselves in, that connected worship. The creation is such an important thing in a lot of regards. Paul wrote in the book of Romans chapter 1, he's talking about the unrighteous and the unbelievers, but he said that they're without excuse. And the reason they're without excuse is because they've seen with their eyes, and they know that from the beginning of creation, that his divine wisdom, his productivity in making everything, they can see it. And because it's out there and then nature is what it is, people are without excuse in unbelief, in unrighteousness. So, it's that important. It really is. I think that's awesome. We also know that all of creation was made to worship and to magnify God. So man, I'm with you 100% on it.
Yeah, think about one of my favorite quotes, and I may botch up the wording a little bit. One of my favorite pastors is the late Adrian Rogers. I find myself now even, looking on YouTube, finding some of his old sermons sometimes just to listen to while I'm in here working. I really enjoyed listening to him. And one thing that he said during one of his sermons, I always remember, he said, you would have to feel sorry for an atheist who would see a sunrise and not have anyone to thank for it. Right. And just like you're talking about the sunsets on the beach, I think that is one of the key elements to getting out there, and it's just being in nature. And hunters, we see it, we're out there, but man, you do. It's like I can't deny God when I'm in the outdoors, when I'm walking around and in the woods, and I see the creatures, and breathing that fresh air and just seeing, just seeing creation, the beauty of it. That didn't just happen. That didn't happen spontaneously. Someone wants me to explain how God got here. No, I can't tell you. God will tell you one of these days. Just stick with us, and you'll find out. Right. It's not going to be me explaining it, but God hopefully will explain it to me. But I think that sometimes we see, and again, not to try to put people into a box. A lot of there's nothing wrong living in a big city. Yeah, sure. A lot of there's a lot of good in that. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to live in a city, but I think we start to see a lot more lawlessness and things like that we see in these urban areas, and I think in some ways it would be easier to be an atheist, to take on or accept that point of view, living in the city where you're just staring at the concrete jungle and you're surrounded by what man made. Sure. Than when you get out into nature and you actually see the hand of God directly with what He did.
Yeah, that's great perspective, great thought. And it's I think it's biblically accurate. Man has been the rebellious of God's creation. Man has been the ones who have strayed from God's intent in His creation. You don't see, deer involved in all of the sexual revolutionary culture that's going on today. I mean, they are practicing what God designed them to practice, and because they are, they're thriving and they're living right. It's always in the idea of man when we've built a huge city or we've congregated mass numbers and we've all got these depraved minds. That's when things are awry.
Are you telling me that buck, and that buck was taken by our man Jake over there, by the way, both of these that are sitting here, are you telling me that buck never identified as a doe?
I doubt it.
Yeah.
I doubt it.
Does have a nice rack, so.
That's right. Manly looking doe.
Yeah, there you go. Well, another thing, I would use nature to an advantage as a witness. If you've got a friend who, if you don't know that he knows Jesus Christ, or is not, he may believe in God but hasn't really accepted Christ. I think one of the best tactics you can have, like tactics like you're trying to get him to do something that he doesn't want to do, but an approach would be to take him to hunting camp. That's right. Take him with you. Get out there in nature, because not only let him see the beauty of what's around him, but I think it opens up a more honest discussion than just you meet someone out here at a restaurant or you're just during your everyday life. Once you get away from everything, you take that deep breath together, just trying to relax and get out there. I think it's a great opportunity to share the gospel with others. Share it when they're surrounded by the creation of God. You've got them out there. I've got one friend that talks about. We have a mutual friend who, when he first met him, didn't really know God. And he said, I don't take the credit for, sharing the gospel with him. And then he was saved in that moment, accepted Christ. But he said, it was all foreign to him. And he said, I think some of the things we would go hunting, before we had our meal, we said the blessing. Yeah. So, it's kind of weird. Like, well, what are you doing? Well, we're going to say the blessing, and hearing that prayer. And being out in that kind of environment, I think that's a very good tool to take just in sharing the gospel.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen that, and that's a multicultural biblical thing right there to look at creation and look at man and see the differences and actually use those differences to glorify God and to share. Man, I was in East Asia, and we were in a huge city, and it's just like. The concrete, the people, everybody was just kind of beat down by society. You could tell that, man-made establishment had just oppressed people to pieces, and you could see it on their faces. And after a couple of weeks of being in the city, I could feel it on mine. But when we got out into the countryside and we left the city and we were way out into the mountains, even though people didn't know, the gospel message we were bringing, they still had that heightened relief. They weren't in that concrete jungle. They were in creation, and they had that freedom. So even in people's unbelief, like Paul said in Romans 1, they still know and they still understand and have a greater respect for who God is, even if they don't know him. Mm-hmm. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And I think one thing too that hunting does for me, or being out in nature does for me, I think it really makes me more thankful, and when you look at, just thinking about the quotes I see, like social media, someone goes hunting, they go fishing. One of the words that tends to pop up when they're given a description of their day is the word blessed. I think when you're out there, and you'll see blessed if they don't have a bunch of fish in the boat, or if they didn't get a buck that morning or kill a limit of ducks, you still see the word blessed come up, because they understand that they're just thankful to be able to be out there. Yeah. And I think, I don't know, I think there's something about being out in nature and doing that just gives you some time to reflect on life. And I think it boosts your gratitude a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree 100%. Remember feeling that the first time I actually got to shoot a deer, shot a doe. Jerry Hitchcock, a friend of mine in Manila, Arkansas, took me hunting, and man, I sat there on that stand for 2 hours and just waited. And the snow was starting to fall, and it was just looking around how beautiful it was. And then up she popped on the hill, and I probably should have waited, but I was just like, wow, all right, Lord, here we go, and just overwhelmed with gratitude in those moments. It's an awesome feeling. It really is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it really is. Well, man, listen, I appreciate it. Kind of a quick conversation today, but thanks for coming in here and doing this. And again, guys, we definitely want to connect with you. So if you have anything that you'd like to talk about, you got any questions for me, any questions for Bryan, be sure and reach out to us. Leave us some comments. If you have some other topics that you'd like for us to discuss, something you want me to throw at Bryan. He's a lot more philosophical, and if you need to know how to call a duck, I'll touch that. Anything any deeper in thought than that, I'm going to steer you Bryan's way. But a good phone number to reach us at 501-207-2994. You can email me at info@elitecalls.net. With any questions or anything in the world that we can help you with, we're definitely available. So reach out to us if you need. Bryan, how can they get in touch with you? What's the best way?
Man, I'm on all social media platforms, Bryan Shanks or Bearded Shanks, one of the two. You can find me there.
Bearded? How did you?
It just stuck.
It just fit. Then. Absolutely. Well, guys, like I said, be sure and like and subscribe. And thanks for joining us. And look forward to talking to you next time.